Ready or not? Ready for what? And that's what I want to explain. That's what I want to answer. I want to be able to give enough information that everyone and anyone that is here today, as well as those who are studying by way of internet, will have some understanding and a better understanding as to what time it is. And so as I attempt to really bring in more of the focus of time, hopefully this will give us a little more understanding. And last time, hopefully I can find one of these that is still working. Last time we focused on a couple of items as far as time is concerned, 400-year and 430-year. And we identified them, but today my focus is really going to be on 7 and 70. So I'm going to narrow down the field, and what you will see that they're all in conjunction. Now, when I was teaching my last message and I dealt with 400 and 430, I love studying with other ministers of our walk as well, because the hard questions come. And so I was asked some very specific questions. We midrashed on them, and it's kind of an ongoing midrash as well. Rabbi Tu, who has a very keen understanding of scriptural knowledge, asked actually the same question. And so what it did is it pushed me to go deeper into what I already know, but to try to bring it to the surface and be able to explain it to someone else, to be able to find documentations to make it a little bit more relevant or understandable from point A to point B. And this is the question that Rabbi Tu asked. Where do we start our count and end the count? And so this is when I was looking at the 400 year, let me go ahead and give that. This is kind of a review. 400, 430. These two are very important. One is finished, the other is not. Very simple. Okay? I'm going to really keep it simple. Even though I'll have some numbers up, I won't get too busy with them. But 430 years, as I was able to prove, has been completed. This is done. 430 years. The 430 years is actually Misraim, the time that they spent in Egypt. From Passover going in to Passover coming out. In other words, the same day they went in is the same day they came out 430 years later. Now, I think that that's very simple, but there is a complexity to it, but I'm going to keep it right here. This is done. So what's outstanding is Genesis. Someone go ahead and pull that, because I didn't use it in my message for today. Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. I used it in my last teaching, but I just want to make sure that you see I'm using some very factual numbers. The thing with numbers is you want to know where to start and where to end. Yahweh gives us the numbers. We're just trying to figure out where do we start. So Egypt is 430 years. Let me go ahead and prove that too. While someone get Genesis 15:13, someone else go ahead and get Acts chapter 7, verse 6 and 7. Acts chapter 7, verse 6 and 7. If you have Genesis 15:13, go ahead and read that.
And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
All right, so first thing we have to recognize is that Yahweh spoke to Abraham and said, your descendants will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. Now, as you continue to read that, you realize that he says, but in the fourth generation, they will return back here, for the offense of the Amorites has not been complete. So, in other words, there are some things that time has not brought about as of yet. So that's 400 years. But how long did they stay there? Let's go to Acts chapter 7, verse 6 and 7. Whoever has that, read it nice and loud.
And Elohim spoke in this way, that his seed would be sojourning in a foreign land, and that they would be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. And the nation to whom they shall be enslaved I shall judge. And Elohim, and after that they shall come out and serve me in this place.
Okay, so we have two witnesses there, and that one goes back to 400. Let's go to, that was Acts. So let's go to Galatians chapter 3. Galatians chapter 3, and just kind of comb through. I don't have my scripture here with me, but it's close to 15, verse 15, somewhere near there. It gives 430 years. And that's what I want to bring out, that the promise that was given 430 years does not annul the covenant that was previously. Verse 17, all right, can you go ahead and read that nice and loud?
Now this I say, Torah that came 430 years later does not annul a covenant previously confirmed by Elohim in Messiah, so as to do away with the promise.
Can you read that one more time? Hold on, I want you to put it in the mic. Yes.
Verse 17, now this I say, Torah that came 430 years later does not annul a covenant previously confirmed by Elohim in Messiah, so as to do away with the promise.
All right, so this is confirmed that the Torah that came 430 years does not nullify, annul, the promise previously confirmed in Messiah Yahshuah. So in other words, there is something that has to do with the leadership of Yahshuah that is dealing with the 400, but there's a promise that was given at Mount Sinai. So that's what we're talking about here. This is Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai has happened. But the promise that comes through Yahshuah is still outstanding, because it's a 400 year that your descendants, Abraham, would be what? Enslaved and mistreated. So this is still outstanding. Now, we have the Sabbath and we have sabbatical. Sabbath is every 7 days. Sabbatical is every 70 years. In other words, the year of release is what? Every 7 years, right? That's the year of release. So it's the law dealing with Hebrew slaves. Every 7 years you must release them, and all debts are canceled. 7 times 7, it gets more complex. 7 times 7 plus 1. So 7 times 7, where's my young students? 7 times 7. Go ahead, Ephraim.
49.
What is it?
49.
Yes, 49. Plus 1. Let me get one of my younger students. Let's see. Okay, they tied up. All right, go ahead and shout out. 49 plus 1. 50. There she go. Thank you. So, 49 plus 1 is 50. Every 50 years is Jubilee. All of these laws are tied together, and they produce redemption, freedom, but it's a process of time, and that's what I'm here to show. What is the process of time? Ready or not? So, what I want to look at today is the building of the third temple, and when will this happen? That's one question. The redemption of Israel, when will that happen? The return of Yahshuah, when will this happen? The return of the kingdom of Israel, which is what they asked Yahshuah, Acts chapter 1, verse 6. Verse 6 through 8. Are you going to restore the temple at this time? Are you going to restore the reigns of Israel at this time, the kingdom of Israel? All right, so Haggai chapter 1 through verse 8. And what I did here to kind of present to you, I'm going to give you a timeline. As I always say, this is not for you to say this is what Rabbi said and that's it. No. I'm only presenting this to you as my research and what I find as what I understand scripturally, and enough to say, you know what, we need to prepare ourselves. Yahshuah is on the way. We need to get ready. Chapter 1, verse 1 through 8. In the second year of Darius the sovereign, in the 6th month, on the first day of the month, the word, somebody say the word of Yahweh came by Haggai, the prophet, to Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, governor of Yehuda, and to Yehuda, son of Yehoshaphat, the high priest, saying, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, saying, This people have said, the time has not come, the time the house of Yahweh is to be built. Then the word of Yahweh came by Haggai, the prophet, saying, You have sown much, but brought in little. Eat, but you do not have enough. Drink, but you are not filled with drink. Clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. And he who earns wages, earn wages to put into a bag with holes. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, Consider your ways. And this is actually a later verse. I think this one is verse 9. Go up to the mountain, and you shall bring wood and build the house, and I will be pleased with it, and let me be esteemed, said Yahweh. So let me give you a little bit of background what is happening here. We're now and focusing in on Babylon. Babylon is a 70-year period of time. So this is my focus, and this is where I'm reading now. Them coming back from Babylon. They are now back in the land, and very short time after, I'll show all of this as I continue, but this is now the 70th year. They're back in the land, and you'll see as I go on. This is why I'm giving you timelines, so that you can verify that I'm not just picking some numbers and putting them with scriptures. All right. So there's two books that I'm using primarily. There's other books in here, or scriptures as well. But two main books that I need to do this, which is Haggai and Zechariah. So those two I'm going to be heavy on, and others going to be pulled in for reference and proof. All right, so let's zero in what is being done here. The temple is being built. Remember, they went back from Babylon. Brain freeze. Babylon. So we're looking at the 70th year. It's going to go back and forth a little bit, but I'll try to keep it as forward as I can, because some of the reading is going to go back, and then it's going to bring it back into present time, past time. But anyway, Yahweh is he's a little bit angry with Israel. Those who went back, the temple is not being built as it should be, and so he's raising question. In other words, here's the instructions. Go up to the mountain, you shall bring wood and build the house, and I will be pleased with it, and let it be esteemed, said Yahweh. Now, one thing I want to let you know, we're talking about the second temple. The first temple was built by Solomon. Okay, that's the first built temple. Now we're looking at the second temple that was built by Zerubbabel. And so the prophet Haggai has now been sent to speak to Israel. Verses 12 through 15, then Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Yehoshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of Yahweh the Elohim and the word of Haggai the prophet, as Yahweh the Elohim had sent him. And the people feared the presence of Yahweh. And Haggai, the messenger of Yahweh, spoke the message of Yahweh to the people, saying, I am with you, declares Yahweh. And Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Yehudah, and the spirit of Yehoshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people. And they came and worked on the house of Yahweh of hosts, their Elohim. On the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the sovereign, or king. Now, let me just focus in on this part quickly. We know that they're building the house. So when are they building the house? Well, it says in the last bullet, number 4, on the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the sovereign, or king. There's a timeline right there of very specific numbers. The 24th day of the month What month? The 6th month. Now, for our Hebrew scholars right here, if this is the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar, what is the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar? Say it loud. Sukkot. So that gives you somewhat timing of the year. This is a month before Sukkot. Let's go even more specific than that. If this is the 24th day of the 6th month, it is what? 3 weeks before Sukkot. That's very specific. Yahweh gives it to us. All right? So, he continues to give us more. So I just wanted to draw that timeline so that you begin to focus in on time and what time it is. All right, so here is Yahweh's criticism of Israel, and he wasn't quiet about it. In the 7th month, on the 21st day of the month, now let me hold it right there really quickly for a second. And you should begin to think 7th month, 21st day, because you know what question I'm going to ask. What is going on now, or what should be going on at this time, is the 7th month, Sukkot, right? And it's the 21st day. It is what? The last great day, right? So it's the end time of Sukkot. So our holy days should be finished at this period of time. Now, for a traditional reader, they wouldn't understand that because that's not their walk. But for those of us who keep the feast of Yahweh, when we read these things, they jump off the page at us. And so I'm giving you something very, 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 did I say very? Very specific. Okay? Here's the 70th year that we're focusing on. I'm not saying what I'm reading is the 70th year because we got a little bit of time in there. Remember what year it is. It's the 2nd year of who? Darius' reign as king. Now, what we can do here is jump over, which y'all know I probably already did that, jump over to secular calendars and look at world history for empires, right? We'll get there. We'll get there. So I'll show some more specifics. Now, continuing to read. In the 7th month, on the 21st day of the month, the word of Yahweh, somebody say the word. The word of Yahweh came by Haggai the prophet, saying, speak, please, to Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, governor of Yehuda, and to Yehoshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and to the remnant of the people, saying, who is there left among you who saw this house in its former glory or esteem? And how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes as naught when compared to it? Let me rephrase that so we understand. Who is it that is left among you who went to Babylon captivity and has now returned, saw the first temple, and how do you see this land and the temple now? Is it not nothing? Let me read it. Is it not in your eyes as naught when compared to it? What is the it? The former temple. That's the subject matter. So if you're looking at what should be there and what's not there compared to what was there, how do you see it now? That's the question. And now, be strong, Zerubbabel, declare Yahweh. Be strong, Yehoshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and be strong, all you people of the land, declares Yahweh, and work. Do what? Work, build a temple. For I am with you, declares Yahweh of hosts, the word that I coveted with you when you came out of Mizraim, going back here, 430th year, the day they went in, the day they came out. Very specific information we have. The word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Mizraim, and my spirit is remaining in your midst. Do not fear. Let the esteem of this latter house be greater than the former, and said Yahweh of hosts. And in this place I give peace, declares Yahweh of hosts. Here's the deal. He's drawn a criticism of Israel and the temple that is not really built yet. The temple was destroyed, right? Babylon, by fire. And so he's saying, now I want you to build the temple, right? So here is our place where we are now. This is what Yahweh is speaking to us. The 70th year, they have now returned. I'll bring in scriptures to prove that. In the 70th year, now I want you to get to work, get busy. You build it, and I will be pleased with it. Israel, you build it, and I will be pleased with it. Right? That's what he says. But look, he says, my spirit is remaining in your midst. So in other words, although I've scattered you into Babylonian captivity, I was still with you, even in captivity. That's what it says. Okay, let me go back. Second to last bullet, the word that I coveted. Wait a minute, here's a promise at Mount Sinai, that if you keep my commandments, I will never leave you nor forsake you. This is Mount Sinai, 430 years, and they came out. The day they went in, the day they came out. This is not a coincidence. Passover. Well, let me ask this question. When was Yahshuah crucified? Passover. Is it a coincidence? No. The day they went in, the day they came out, 430 years. I'm pounding that for a reason. Very specific numbers. Very, very specific numbers. Okay? And I'm going to keep on doing that. All right, so let's... Oh, here's the final thing he says. Let the esteem of the latter house be greater than the former house. Now, you know, if he's talking about the latter house and the esteem of the former house, let me say it correctly. The former house, but the esteem of the latter house will be what? Greater. So that gives us how many temples? 2. Right? So that gives us historically 2 temples that had to be built. All right, now. And in this place I will give peace. Question. Is there peace in the land of Israel today, at present time? Have the land experienced everlasting peace yet? It has not happened. So something is still outstanding. Something still must be done. And I want to present to you this 400 year is tied to it. It has not happened yet. They got a little time. They got a little peace. But they are not in peace even to this day. But don't forget, there is a time that they will say peace and safety. So what I'm going to show you now is generations of two different kingdoms. Well, this one, it kind of, I have the question as to how do I look at Persia and the Medes, and I studied that, and there's a tie here, and I think there's a blood tie, but, and I'll give you what I got, but I'm going to go ahead and explain this really quickly. All right, so here is the Medes. I kind of went straight to the Medes because you got Persia, and then you have Medes, who are the latter. All right. We know that the 70th year, if you can see in the blue, Cyrus, that generation, let's see, that would be 5. I'm going to use the numbers they have here. I'm not, when I see the numbers, I always have a question. I'll just leave it at that. All right, so this is somewhere under 600. And we have Cyrus, who is now sending them back from the Medes, Persia. I'm going backwards. Medes, Persia, Babylon. Y'all know I got the statue in here, so I'll show that in a few minutes. But when I get there, just kind of relate it back to this. I have a lot of visuals for you today. So Cyrus is the one who sent them back with letter and authority of helping them and any other nation, right? So that's the 70th year. Very specific. Remember, this goes back to Daniel, right? Yahshuah points back to Daniel. And so, you know, these are generations, different kings of Persia and the Medes. And I think this one is more focused on the Medes. And I did some research, and actually who I'm going to bring in is Darius right here, 522 through 486. The numbers are going backwards. So you're counting down to 0 or 1 to the time of the birth of Messiah. So before Christ, before Messiah, right? AD, Anno Domini, or after death. Okay, so after death, then the numbers are going up. So here we are at 2017, getting ready to Gregorian calendar, go into 2018. Now, hopefully you can kind of, you know, see that, what I'm showing you. So the blue is one generation, and green is the second generation. Cyrus the second. You got 2 leaders of the Medes, and then a third leader, king, and then go all the way over, you have Darius. Darius was a soldier in the army of Cyrus, and some things happened where Cambyses, and I think it was probably the second, since they're on the same generation, he was killed in battle, but Darius, I'll explain in a second, was his, they call it lancer or spear person. So he was, you know, he moved up in the ranks, in other words. And he pressed the kingdom for a new king once Cambyses, who's a descendant of Cyrus, once he was killed, then Darius was selected as king because of some things. I'm not going to go into it because it was, he kind of said it was prophetic. Some things occurred and everybody looked at him and was like, oh, he must supposed to be the king. And then he became king. Now, that's through my research and looking at the 2 different kingdoms, because I've always had a question, why did Yahweh use Persia and the Medes in the same time frame? And so that's what happened. Persia, who is today's Iranian, Okay? So Persia and the Medes, so that's where we are. Darius, let me explain him a little bit. Darius now is the one who is in charge and dealing with, after the 70th year, they're back in their land, and it is the second year of who? King Darius. So you see where I'm at now, okay? So I'm giving you very specific number. Here's the Persian Empire. They're pretty big. This is Iran, and you go over into Iraq, of course. But let me just show you what's what. Here is Egypt, and Israel is actually right in here. You can't see them, but they're right in here. Here is Babylon. So Persia defeated Babylon, okay? They defeated Babylon, and now we're at Babylon was the head. Always keep in your mind when I'm teaching on this, keep the statue in mind. So Babylon is the head. We're now here, okay, at the shoulders and arms. Okay, so we're talking about a timeline. Now, I do have in here secular and empires. I'll show that, but I think Yahweh's timeline gives me at least more understanding, but I will show it. Here's another, here's a better look at the Persian Empire that was, but what it is today and what we know it as. And when we look at a map, we got Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan. And notice, we're all in this. This is the Middle East conflict, as they would call it. Right. So we're all in this. So you should be thinking about now, Israel become a heavy stone for the nations. United States is all in this. In other words, we are fighting wars, we are starting wars, we are just trying to tell everybody what to do. Let me point this one out. Because you see a better look at it right now. Here is Israel. This is Israel. This is a blow up of the map. Saudi Arabia. But here's Israel. Here is Lebanon. Remember the scripture talks a lot about Lebanon and the cypress trees? Well, that's where the wood is going to come from to build the temple. Yahweh has already selected the trees of Lebanon. All right, so you got Syria. This is where we are. This is a proxy war between Russia and the United States. And we're both acting like, oh, we ain't starting no trouble. We ain't fighting with nobody. But I'll show you in another who some of these people are. And you got Turkey, who's, there's a lot of stuff that's going on here. Okay, so I can't explain everything, but don't forget, we got Egypt down here in the corner, still in the background. But let me bring in another one. Kurd. Who are the Kurds? The Medes. So now you see why such a conflict in the same country of Syria. You got the Kurds who are against the president Assad. Now let me explain what's happening. United States is on the side of the Kurds. And they're fighting a civil war through the Kurds. That's who United States is backing. But on the other side is Russia. And Russia is fighting through Syria, and the president and those who are Persian descent, okay, Iraq, Iran, all of that, they're filtering in, and so we have this major conflict. Two wars that are being fought, a civil war and an international war simultaneously. That's what we're seeing in Syria. Now, why? Because look how close they are to the land of Israel, which is what he said. I will allure them to Israel, and there I will sit in judgment. So you have all of this. Here is Syria. This is the big fight. You have these people who are fighting against the president of this country. The president of Syria, his name is Assad. What is the capital of Syria? Damascus. And remember the prophecy, when you see Damascus fall or cease from being a city, right? So that's Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1, if you want to check it out, and then drop down to verse 14. But this is what's happening. And so what they want to do is come on into Israel. This is Israel down here. On top is Lebanon. You got Turkey, they're waiting to jump on them. Iraq waiting to jump on them. Jordan waiting to jump on them. Even the Kurds who are fighting Syria are waiting to jump on them. Iraq. So they're surrounded by their enemies. There is so much prophecy right now, and I'm just kind of giving you a visual so that you can see that the time is now, because it says, when you see these things, this is what we're seeing on the news every day. Anytime they talk about the conflict in Israel, the conflict in Syria, the conflict with the United States or Russia, we're seeing the progress or the progression of it right now. Let's get a better look at the land of Israel. Now here is a blow-up of Israel. This is stretched, okay? Israel, as you saw, was very tiny. So now I'm focusing in on Israel. Right here, right in here, this is called the West Bank. And the West Bank is under Islamic control, although Israel, the government of Israel, everything in white, they are in control of it, but as of the 67 war, they had to give back a couple of spots, okay? Here and here. And what's important about here is this is where Yahshuah lived. Nazareth. Also, Bethlehem is a little further up. Nazareth is closer up here, but Bethlehem, where he was born, is here. No, I'm sorry, because this is where they were having the Christmas party. If you didn't hear the news, President Trump made them mad over there, and so they canceled the Christmas party and celebration in the land of Nazareth. And so they said, we will not have it this year because, well, here's the other part. Trump, he voted for the capital to be moved from, somebody shout it out real quick, Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, right? So back to Jerusalem. So that kind of puts things back into focus to where it was when Yahshuah was here, right? And so a lot of that territory that they have been negotiating for, this is as of 67, the stripe areas that was given back, and up here in the other stripe area, this is Syria, where they can just now come back down into it. Up top is Lebanon. So they're surrounded by their enemies, and they can come in pretty much at any time, but because of the wars that are going on, they have to focus on the wars ahead of them. and try not to mess with Israel too much. But, you know, they have their little skirmishes as well. And so now let's begin to put this together with the prophet Zechariah. And so now I'm going into book 2. When you look at Zechariah, you probably want to start with Haggai because the two are very close together, and that's what I'm going to show you. Before we looked at the 6th month, right, and the 2nd year, and then we went to the 7th month, right? So now let's continue. In the 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahweh came to Zechariah, son of Berechiah, son of Iddo the prophet, saying, Yahweh was very wroth with our fathers, and you shall say to them, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, Turn back to me, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I shall turn back to you, declares Yahweh of hosts. Do not be like your fathers, to whom the former prophets proclaimed, saying, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, Turn back now from your evil ways and your evil deeds. But they did not obey or give heed to me, declares Yahweh. Now who's speaking? Yahweh, right? He is speaking to Yahweh. Yahweh is speaking, and he's sending a message through the prophet to the king of Israel, or the tribe of Yehudah. Okay? He says, turn back to me and I'll turn back to you. Do not be like your fathers, to whom the former prophets proclaimed. That's very important right there. So the prophets came and they spoke and delivered messages. But guess what? Did they obey? No, not according to what Yahweh is saying here. But they did not obey or give heed to me, declares Yahweh. Your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my laws, which I commanded my servants, the prophets, did they not overtake your fathers? Then they turned back and said, as Yahweh of hosts planned to do to us, according to our ways and according to our deeds, so he has done with us. That applies to us even here today. How so? Here's his question. Where's your fathers? In other words, where is Israel? They know who they are. They've been brought back. And now he's speaking through the prophet once again, another prophet, and he's asking this question. Where's your fathers? Where are the prophets that I sent to speak to them? Do any of them live forever? But my commands, my laws, in other words, they are forever. So the prophet comes, he brings a word, they die. Does that mean the commandments of Yahweh die? No. That's exactly what he's saying. So those who teach we are no longer under the law, they will suffer the same indignations of Israel. Let me keep it. Your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my laws, which I commanded my servants, the prophets, did they not overtake your fathers? In other words, did they not go into captivity? Did they not die? Were they not enslaved? So I ask the same question. If we are Israel, we're in another land. We're in a land that, why do we speak English? I'm not an Englishman. I don't look like them. Romans, Spaniards, or Greeks, I don't speak their language, but I speak English. Somebody taught me English. Somebody taught us English. We've been schooled in this system, Babylon. We've been housed, we've been killed, we've been raped. Everything that happened to Israel happened to us in this. So where is our fathers? Where is our ancestors? Were they not under the same law that we should too be under? Then they turned back and said, as Yahweh of hosts planned to do to us according to our ways, according to our deeds, so he has done with us. In other words, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. We've been brought here and enslaved, and Yahweh did exactly what he said he was going to do. I will place you on ships, send you into a nation that you know not their language. You will marry a wife, and another shall sleep with her. That's slavery. The master came in and out of our little huts as often as he wanted. Zechariah chapter 1, verse 8 through 10. I looked at night and I saw a man. So I'm going to bring something else in now. I looked at night and saw a man riding on a red horse, and he was standing among the myrtle trees in the shade, and behind him were horses, red, sorrel, and white. And I said, my master, what are these? And the messenger who was speaking to me said to me, let me show you what they are. And the man who stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, they are the ones Yahweh has sent to go throughout the earth. So let's focus in on what this vision is. What is going on? So here's a prophecy being spoken and a vision being seen. We know he sees a man riding on a horse. And that man is standing among a very specific tree. He just didn't say trees. He said myrtle trees. Question. When do we have a relationship with branches of good trees? 4 species, and myrtle is one of them. The weeping willow, the myrtle. During what season? Sukkot. We are commanded to wave the 4 species, right? Well, look, here's a man standing among the myrtle tree. Who is this man? I became intrigued. There's 14 chapters of the book of Zechariah, and I didn't try to get them all. I couldn't. But you should read the whole Haggai and Zechariah. Read them both together, over time, of course. But it'll make more sense when you connect the two. So I wanted to find out, who is this man? He's riding on a horse. Now we know right away you should be connecting to Revelation. There talks about the 4 horsemen, right? When you look at the colors, they're really the same colors. That sorrel is this speckled, really. Okay, but right here we see 3 of them. So this man, I want to find out who this man is. Right away we know that he is not just some man. First of all, we have to recognize there is something heavenly that's going on. Verse 9 says, I said, my master. So that should lead us to some type of thought that, could this be Yahshuah? What are these? The messenger who was speaking to me said to me, let me show you what they are. And the man who stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, they are the ones Yahweh. So he have access to Yahweh to answer this question. Because he says, they are the ones. What ones are we talking about? We're talking about these horses, and we're talking about this man who is standing among the myrtle tree. But he's riding a horse. But then we see him among the myrtle tree. They are the ones Yahweh has sent. So, this has to be a messenger because Yahweh sent him. They are the ones Yahweh has sent to go throughout the earth. So Yahweh is checking on the nations as well as Israel. And I'm jumping over to chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, and he showed me Yehoshua, high priest, standing before the messenger of Yahweh. There's that messenger again. Messenger of Yahweh. And Satan standing at the right hand to be an adversary to him. And Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebukes you, Satan. Yahweh, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? And Yehoshua was dressed in filthy garments and was standing before the messenger, and he answered and spoke to those who stood before him, saying, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, see, I have removed your guilt from you, and shall put costly robes on you. And I said, let him put a clean turban on his head. Then they put a clean turban on his head, and they put garments on him, and the messenger of Yahweh stood by. So there's something very particular about this messenger of Yahweh. And enters the name of Yehoshua, which is also the name of Yeshua. It is in poetic form or in Hebrew form as high priest. Now, you should be calculating the time. So is this Joshua or Yehoshua who led them into the promised land after Moshe? It's not. We have about 1,000 years difference here. So this is a different high priest. And it tells us he is the son of another high priest. But let's look at the parts, okay? So I think this will bring in some more clarity. Zechariah chapter 3, verses 6 through 10. And the messenger of Yahweh witnessed to Yehoshua, saying, thus said Yahweh of hosts, if you walk in my ways, and if you guard my duty, then you shall also rule my house, and also guard my courts. And I shall give you access among these standing here. Now listen, Yehoshua the high priest, you and your companion who sit before you, for they are men of symbol. Keep that in mind right there. There's some symbols that are going on. There's some symbolic gestures Yahweh is using. So let's look at the symbols. Continuing to read, for look, I am bringing my servant, the branch. See the stone which I have put before Yehoshua? On one stone are 7 eyes. See, I am engraving its inscription, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I shall remove the guilt of that land in one day. In that day, that's very particular right there. When Yahweh says, in that day, he's saying, pay attention. In that day, these are the events of that day. Declares Yahweh of hosts, you shall invite one another under, the vine and under the fig tree. Whoa, that's big time symbols there. Okay. you know what? I'm going to go on because I think I'll explain it better in the next frame. But you got the branch, you got the vine, you got the fig tree, you got a stone with 7 eyes. 7 eyes, right? So you know that that's not just mere human. You know that this is more messenger, angelic, however you want to. This is not man, okay? All right. So, but cue in on this. You shall invite one another under the vine. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener, right? So, I wanna continue looking at this particular branch. John 15 verses 1 through 11. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Remember when Yahshuah rose and who was it, Miriam? She was talking and saying, where did they place his body? And she thought, who did she think she was talking to? The gardener, right? I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Who was the gardener in the beginning? Adam. I have no man to till the ground. So he put Adam in the garden. So now we see Yahshuah as the gardener. But the original gardener, Adam, he messed up. So now Yahshuah comes back, and he's being mistaken for the gardener. But who is the gardener? The Father. Who is Yahshuah? The true vine. What comes off of a vine? Branches. Right? I think we're symbols. Symbols, okay? All right, so every branch in me that bears no fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it bears more fruit. You are already clean because the word which I have spoken to you, stay in me and I stay in you. As the branch is unable to bear fruit of itself unless it stays in the vine. I am the vine. Unless it stays in the vine, so neither you unless you stay in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. He who stays in me and I in him, he bears much fruit, because without me because without me you are able to do naught or nothing. If anyone does not stay in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up. And after gathering them and throwing them into the fire, and they are burned. If you stay in me and my words stay in you, you shall ask whatever you wish. It shall be done for you. In this my Father is esteemed, that you bear much fruit, and you shall be my taught ones. As the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Stay in me. If you guard my commands, you shall stay in my love, even as I have guarded my Father's commands and stay in his love. These words I have spoken to you, so that my joy might be in you, and that your joy might be complete. So right here, now we have identified the vine and the branches. And we also, I believe now we can identify who was in the myrtle tree, among the myrtle tree. I believe that was Yahshuah, as the messenger who was showing the symbols and the signs of what was and what is to be. So what we looked at is past, and now we're also looking at future. Chapter 4, and I'm nearing the end of this part here. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, the hand of Zerubbabel has laid the foundation of this house, and his hands shall complete it. And you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me to you. For who has despised the day of small beginnings? They shall rejoice when they see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. These 7 are the eyes of Yahweh, which diligently seek throughout all the earth. Then I responded and said to him, what are these 2 olive trees, one at the right hand of the lampstand, and the other at its left? And I responded a second time and said to him, what are these 2 olive branches which empty golden oil from themselves by means of the 2 golden pipes? And he answered me and said, do you not know what these are? And I said, no, my master. And he said, these are the 2 anointed ones who stand beside the master of all the earth. The 2 witnesses. So there's a time element that is connected to the 2 witnesses, or the 2 prophets that are said to return. And I'm skipping all the way to the 13th chapter, and I'm going to close out with this and continue my next teaching. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 2, and it shall be in that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, that I cut off all the names of the idols from the earth, and they shall be remembered no more. And I shall also remember the prophets and the unclean spirits from the earth. Now let's just analyze this quickly as I close out here. Has the land of Israel gone into a time of everlasting peace? We've already asked that. But have they gone into a time of peace at this time? Here's another checkpoint. That I cut off the names of the idols from the earth. So, in the land of Israel or any place in the earth, are we still in a society that is prevalent with idolatry? Do the nations, do Israel still have an issue with idolatry? Are they still serving other gods? Are there anything that is unclean? I shall also remove the prophets. Are there still people who are still trying to prophesy in the name of the Most High? Are there still people who are saying, come and let me prophesy to you for that new house, that new car, that new husband? I did say new husband. That new wife, I did say that new wife. Because we're still doing the same cycles. Who's staying together? Who's completing the covenant? Just another example I wanted to show you. We're still in all of the mess that we've been in, and we're still doing the same things as a human race. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm talking about there are still people. Let me be more specific. Go to the land of Israel. I told you earlier that they're still doing Christmas in the land of Israel. And let me be more specific. I cut off the names of the idols from the earth. Has that been completed yet? No, because in what is it, Ezekiel chapter 10, he says, do not do as the heathens, right? For they cut down a tree, they move it into the house, they deck it with silver and gold, right? Now, Yahweh said that's an abomination. He said, don't do it. So, my question still says, I cut off the names of the idols. And y'all know that one, who's, like their, Saint Nick person, or Santa, who's still like the head of that whole thing. And they're doing that specific thing in the land of Nazareth. So Yahweh says, I will cut it off. So I just want to say, here's proof that it has not happened yet. We have not cleared the 400 year yet. Now, I want to submit that we're still looking for it. And this, again, to Rabbi 2, who asked a very specific question. Where we start, where do we end our number at counting, looking for this specific number? And so that's been my task. Had I been able to move through this a little faster, I have it here, but I'm going to save it for another teaching. But if I can just roll forward, I want to show you something with the nations. So... and I have numbers. I got numbers I'm going to take you through. Here, this is on the AD side, up to 1600. This is the European nations. Everything in green is, Europe is purple. Green is colonized by Europe. Partially European control influence is the lighter green. The yellow, Europe's sphere of influence, and the little one over there, never colonized by Europe, is very little. You have 1, 2, 3 areas that have never been colonized by Europe. And so my search is here. I'm looking at European, Roman, to be more specific, their history. And why their history? Because here's the easy part. Yahweh already gave it to us. He said Babylon, Persia, Mede, Greek, and the Roman Empire. He says, but the fourth one is different from the rest. And so there's one that comes after the fourth one, which is really the fifth one. Let's see if I can show you that, and we'll get back to it. So Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then Europe. That's where I'm trying to get to show you Yahweh's timeline. So he's made it easy for us, or easier, to figure out the timeline, although everyone won't understand it, but according to the scriptures, some will. And they are the ones who are shouting, get ready, get ready. He's on his way, he's on his way. And so I'll leave you with this. We're going to continue, and I'm going to get more specific as to where we are. We've resolved the 430 that has happened. Babylon, the 70th year, and they came back and built the second temple. That has happened. Now we got to find this 400 year, and my search begins with Rome or the colonizations of Africa. Let me back up so you see I did have that as well. Land of Africa, colonized by Europe, okay? And when they were independent, each of the nations received their independence. It goes into the 1960s. I was born when some of these countries became free. And even further, here's Zimbabwe 1979, Namibia, 1990. Okay, so we'll look at some of these things. I have lots of information, and I will show you what I believe the 400 year to be. Now, I will say this. There's really no way to say there is a specific 400 year, but until the conclusion of it, you can't say this is it with absolute, okay? It has to happen, be either proven right or wrong. If it's proven wrong, then we have to continue our search. But if it's right, then we'll know. So not until then, but I have very good information for you. Y'all know, let me just ask this question, and I'm ending here. What year did the slave boats come, or the slave ships come to the United States, bringing a lot of those folks? 1619. So you can use your calculator. You already know this number. It is 398 years as of today. Just looking at calendar years, that's all, right? 398 years. So it's worth a look. Can we give Yahweh a praise? Hallelujah.
And then they go, but all you were standing